Monica in Critical Analysis. This is your video for your Chapter 4 assignments. So I'm already in the Week 3 folder, which is where Chapters 3 and 4 are located. I'm going to scroll down. I'm going to go to the To Submit folder. If you have not already viewed your Chapter 3 assignment video, you're going to want to watch that first because I do go over the discussion board and your 2 Chapter 3 assignments. But I'm going to go ahead and talk about your Chapter 4 assignments you're turning in, as well as your optional Chapter 4 practice sheet. All right, so first I'm going to talk to you about your text and skill sheet, your TSP sheet. Here's the actual assignment. There's a Dropbox right underneath it. So let me go ahead and pull that up. All right, when you download it, here is the document. And so part 1 is basically just a recap of the concepts from the chapter. So if you have not already viewed the Chapter 4 lecture video or read the Chapter 4 chapter, then I would recommend doing that before filling this out. So all of these answers, if you're in your textbook, can come from Chapter 4. So if you click on Chapter 4, vocabulary, it's going to walk you through different things. It's going to talk to you about building vocabulary, using context clues, which is one of the strategies we talk about in our lecture video about how to build vocabulary. We also talk about word parts and structures of words and using different reference aids. So if you have not watched the lecture video, that will be to your benefit to go ahead and watch that first before trying to fill out the text and skill sheet, or at the very least, making sure that you've read the chapter and or also gone through the PowerPoint for Chapter 4, because that is where this information is going to come from right here. So please make sure that you answer these following questions, like one sentence honestly will do. So what strategies can be used? At the lecture video, I talk about the different kinds of strategies to help expand vocabulary. Number 2 goes into detail with one of those strategies. What are the different types of context clues? How can word structure, prefix, suffix, root word, help a reader find the meaning? How can context clues help you understand the meaning of an unfamiliar word? And talks about reference aids. So that is a review of the Chapter 4 main concepts. Underneath there, it says complete exercise 4.4 on page 190 to 191, passage 2. So to get there, we're going to go ahead and I'm going to scroll down. Exercise 4.4. I could have also typed in page 190 over here, but just to kind of show you exercise 4.4 right there. And I'm going to, here we go. It said passage 2. So I'm going to go ahead and make sure that I read passage 2, the Clean Air Act. And then it wants you to define using context clues those 4 words. All 4 of those words are inside this paragraph right here. You will not need a dictionary. You are going to try to use either context clues or word parts to help you figure out what those words mean. And so after you've read the paragraph, you will define each of those words, and that's what you are writing on this line right here, the definition of those 4 words. What does prone, reformulated, implemented, and conventional mean? And again, you can get that based on how they're used in this paragraph. From there, part B, under part 2, is generating an antonym for these vocabulary terms. So again, depending on what order you're watching all of these videos in, you may have already watched the vocabulary video and you would have seen all of these words in that video. So just as a refresher, like here's our vocabulary study guide. This is the video from Chapter 4. It wants you to come up with, too many screens here, an antonym. An antonym means the opposite. So for instance, the word scald. So if I go back to my vocabulary study guide, scald means burning hot. Please don't write the words burning hot on that line because it is asking for an antonym. So an antonym might be something like, ice cold. So that's what you're doing for these, is coming up with the opposite of all of these vocabulary terms. And then on the bottom or back or whatever you want to call it, it's asking you to read selection 1, which is where some of your vocabulary words came from. So I would click here, go to selection 1. This was the one about like technology addiction. And so you're going to go ahead, and if you have not already read it based on the vocabulary video, now is your time to read it. And then it wants you to go down to, after you've read the entire article, to check your comprehension. It's going to ask you to answer questions 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So just straight down. And so you can see there's a main idea question. It wants you to summarize the entire article in 1 sentence. Some detail and inference questions as well. And finally, the author purpose. So please make sure you read that selection and answer those 5 questions that are found on the back or bottom side of your text and skills sheet. Whenever you're done with chapter 4 text and skills sheet, please make sure that you save it, go back into the Dropbox. This is due Sunday the 26th, and submit that sheet. All right, moving on, your chapter 4 vocabulary quiz, due the same day on Sunday. So chapter 4 vocabulary, I'm going to pull this up. So again, you want to make sure you have your study guide in front of you, or you freshly viewed the video, whatever you need to do to get through this. And part A, this is still causing a little bit of problem. I'm noticing with chapters 1 and chapter 2 that I've been grading this past week. We need to make sure that we are correcting the sentence if they are not using the word properly. Okay, so for instance, I'm going to do number 3. Once an idea left his head, Marcus never thought of it again. He was very obsessive. Okay, I know that's not right, because the word obsessive means to think about all the time. And so I'm not going to change the word obsessive. I'm just going to rewrite the sentence to make it use the word correctly. So I would say something like, once an idea came into Marcus's head, that's all he could think about moving forward. Something along those lines, okay? So make sure if they're using the word improperly or not in the right context based on our vocabulary, change the sentence somehow. Do not just insert the word not, because that doesn't tell me you know anything about the word. You just know how to put the word not in there. And if the sentence is written fine, just write the word correct on the line. Please don't leave it blank, because I won't know if you're telling me you think it's correct or you just skipped it. All right, part B is short answer. Again, question 1 is always started for you but not completed. So just make sure you answer the question in its totality. For instance, number 3 is kind of a 2-parter. Why are eye disorders a concern? What are symptoms? So make sure you answer both parts of that question. And you can do so in 1 sentence or 2 if you need to. And then part C is fill in the blank. Make sure you plug those in. You will not use all of those words. All right, that is your chapter 4 vocabulary quiz, also due Sunday. Something else that you are working on this week is your first mastery skill. So if you recall from your syllabus and from your intro videos, you have something called mastery skills assessment. They are 25% of your grade. Now, vocabulary, the term determining meaning from context, I have embedded it in week 3 because it's connected to chapter 4, which is right here. However, you will also see them out here. So you'll see the folder for labs. You'll be able to click in there, and by the time your week is open, you'll see this folder right here, determining meaning from context. While all of these are not due until the end of the semester, it is really not going to be to your benefit if you wait until the end of the semester to work on all of these, which is why I've plugged them into their respective chapters. So determining meaning from context, mastery skill, you'll click in there and you'll see you're going to have 2 post-tests. Now, you do not have to complete both of those post-tests, and you can take them in whatever order you want. You can take post-test 1 or post-test 2, whatever works for you. The goal is, and they're both going to be set up the same way. I'll give you like a sneak peek here. You'll click in, you'll hit continue, and it's going to, like, the first couple questions here are really just questions that talk about like the concepts of chapter 4 that have to do with vocabulary building. And then you'll see that they're going to have some sentences, and you have to just define what the boldface word means in the sentence, or in this case in the paragraph. It's going to look just the same for post-test 2. So you're going to see that they're going to have, embedded bold-faced words. Tell me what that word means in the sentence or in the paragraph. Now, as I talked about in your intro videos, you have to complete all 10 mastery skills. Your goal is to get an 80% or higher average on all 10 together. Okay, that does not mean you have to get an 80% every single time you take one of these post tests, because you might get 100% on this one and then next week get a 70%. That's okay. So your goal is to get an 80% on all 10 average together. Now, let's say you take post test 1 and you get a 60 and you're like, oh, that's not great. I would recommend taking post test 2 because it's going to take the higher of the 2 scores. So if you take post test 2 and you get an 80, good. The 80 goes in the grade book, not the 60. The 80 is what will be averaged together with the others. Now, let's say you take post-test 1 and you get a 90 and you're like, I'm good with that. That's totally fine. You do not have to take post-test 2. It's totally up to you. but I would recommend working on the determining meaning from context post-test 1 and or 2 this week so you can stay up to date with all of your mastery skills and not get behind. All right, and then the very last thing I wanted to touch base on this week is you do have, as you can see down here, an optional assignment. And when I say optional, I do truly mean optional, okay? So you'll click in here, vocabulary practice sheets, and you can see there's a folder full of them. If you are looking to practice using context clues, using word parts, whatever that might be, like you can see, I'll click on one of them and show you what it looks like. I'll click on another one as well in just a second. You'll see that it's going to open up, in this case, to a Word document, and it's going to have you practice using context clues. So there's underlined words, and your job is to use context to try to figure out what the word means in that context. Let's say I wanted to do this one. This is going to open up into a PDF, and it's just going to have me, look, there's a key down there, so don't, try not to cheat, but test yourself and see. Now, if you have one that's like a Word document like this and you want some feedback, go ahead and send it to me. There's not going to be a Dropbox for these because they're not graded assignments, and that's the only way I can create a Dropbox is if there's point value associated. What you can do, however, is save it and send it to me as an attachment, either in my Blackboard messages or in my regular Stark State Gmail, my email account. And I will give you feedback and be like, yeah, you got this one right, or think about it this way, but it is totally up to you. And let's say you want to do 2 of these and that's fine, or you want to do all of them, that's fine as well. Okay, it's totally up to you if you want to practice, or in these cases, if you want to practice and then grade yourself below. Okay, so I just sometimes every week will embed optional practices just to see how you're doing with these concepts. All right, so I hope that explains everything for you pretty well for Chapter 4 assignments, and I will see you later.